Morning, we're learning today is Chusr for Shlema for Ilana Chaya Bas Serach. So we're on Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, right near the bottom. But before we get to the bottom, we're just gonna say how we got to where we're at. 5 lines from the top, we have I think it says it's a Mishnah. I thought it was a Brisa. It's a Mishnah in Skolim. Ala Melech Vala Eitzim Shuakanim Nusam Ben. We have a Mishnah that says the Chachamim made a Tnai Bezdin on salt and on wood that Kehanim are allowed to benefit from them. So first the Gemara thought to say that this is saying that Kehanim are allowed to use the salt. They're allowed to benefit. They're allowed to put the salt on the Amar Shmuel. I'm sorry, I had forgot to say the next part. Amar Shmuel l'shana l'karbanim. That is only that they could put on their karbanas. Avalachil, but they can't use it for achil. So at first we thought that meant that that's only talking about that they could put salt on their karbanas that kehanim themselves bring. But for them to eat the basar of the karbanas, that they can't use public salt and when they're eating the karbanas. And the Gemara rejected that because we know that they're allowed to be moilach, they're allowed to salt the skins of the karbanas. So mehechatesa, that eating karbanas should be worse than salted karbanas. That keep so the eating is even a higher use of the carbon when the kahanim eat the carbon. So certainly that could be done with the melech. So we amended it and we say what it means to say is when a kohen brings a carbon, he's allowed to use the salt, the public salt, the tzibur salt that they had put away, and that's only, so Shmuel says that's only for the karbanas, but they can't. They could use the. I'm sorry. They could use the salt of the karbanas when they're bringing a carbon. You have to be meilachet, but when they're eating it, but for the eating their own food, that they're not allowed to salt with. Achilu dechulin. So the Gemara explained what would be the issue with achilas chulim. Why would one think that you could possibly do such a thing? And the Gemara said, because if you would say karbanim means to salt the carbon, it's only because the Chacham made a Tnai Bezdin. But without the Tnai Bezdin, but like we said, how can it be that Yisrael, when he brings the carbon, it's allowed to be salted, and the carbon of a kayin shouldn't be allowed to be salted with public salt? So Gemara now we're up to that teretz. On the first wide line. The reason why we need a chiddush to the Chachamim to say they can use public salt for the kayin's the achila of the kayin of the carbon, and not for that of a Yisrael, is because the Tanan, or not for the achila, to put on to the carbon of a kayin and not a Yisrael, is because the Tanan. Amar Yehuda, Heid ben Bukhri, B'yavne kol kayin shekel einei chayt. Any kayin who gives the machzas shekel is not doing anything wrong. With the inference of that being, obviously, the kayin doesn't have to give the machzas shekel. So when we're talking, which we're going to see in a second, when we're talking about using public money for a carbon, it could be a kayin would be worse, since he has no public money. He didn't chip in for the purchase of the salt, since he is not required to give the machzas shekel. But then to continue the statement of Ben Bukhri, Amaloi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Loi, Kel Kol Chayt She'ein Shekel Chayta. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai disagrees. He says Kahanim are required to give the machzas hashekel. And what we're saying is any kohen who doesn't give his machzas hashekel is a chayta. So why would the Kehanim think that they don't have to give the machzas shekel? El shakoyanim darshem mikras alatzim. The Kohanim try to get out of paying the machzas shekel. Like if you spend a Shabbos in a hotel with a lot of Yidden, this is a common trait we have that we try to get things for free. B'chol minchas kohen kol tia le'soichel. The pasuk says a mincha of a kohen is fully burnt up and it's not eaten. And the Kehanim say, well, there's a rule that a mincha of a kohen is not eaten, and there are these public minchas, like the Eimer and the Shtei Lechem and the Lechapanim, and we're participants in it. They're going to be also to be eaten. If we're going to give the machzas hashekel, we're going to ruin everything, because then part of the payment for these minchas is going to be from Kehanim, and you're not going to be able to eat them, and they are supposed to be eaten. So the Kehanim say, we're very frum. We don't want to give the machzas hashekel because that will ruin these minchas. Zaktimar. Okay, so that's explanation of what the Kehanim try to say. According to Ben Bukhari, Mora asks, since they're not mechayiv to give the machzas shekel, how can they possibly give it? How can they elect to give the machzas shekel? The kamayil chulun hazar. If it's not supposed to be given, then if you do bring it in, you bring in chulun. The way the Mefarshim explain it, is that they say that anyone who gives something and they don't fully attend to give it, it could be a hektish b'tois. It's not really hektish, and then it's going to still be chulin, and then it's optional, and therefore it will be chulin b'azara. The reason why you have to say it is because of the teretz. So according to Maisi, you must learn l'tzibur. The Gemara says no. He does it very full-heartedly. So there's no chashash. Once the Kehanim will makabel on themselves to give it, we're not choishish that they're going to hold it back for themselves and it's really going to remain chulin. They give it and they give it all together, and therefore there's not a problem of maybe chulin bazar. So, so that's what. So now we just went off on this little side issue. But so how is Ben Bukhari going to explain? Well, how is he helpful in understanding why the Kehanim why we need a Tnai Bezdin to say that the Sibur salt can be used for Kehanim? Like we said, maybe the Chachamim only allow the salt to be used from the Yidden, from non-Kehanim, who they have donated money into with the machzas shekel, so their money bought the salt. But the Kehanim, when they bring a mincha, they have to provide their own salt for it. Kamash Mala. So that's what the Torah was telling you. Okay, so that we've concluded this discussion. On the beginning, we said so we were until now talking about the melech. Now we're going to go back to the second part that Shmuel said on the. We said this about the eitzim as well, that the eitzim come from the eitzim also comes from the tzibur. The eitzim that are used for karbanos comes from the tzibur. Where is it so obvious that eitzim come from tzibur? The Tanya. I might think that a person who says I'm bringing a carbon has to go pack along with his animal. He also has to bring along the wood to burn it, just like nisachim, the flour and the wine that gets poured on the mizbeach. That's also his responsibility. Maybe the wood is also similarly his responsibility. Tamaloim ala eitzim asher ala eish asher ala mizbeach. We compare the eitzim that's on the fire, that's on the mizbeach. Ma mizbeach mishel tzibur af eitzim ve'eish mishel tzibur. So too, the wood, just like a mizbeach was built by the Bnei Yisrael as a tzibur, the eitzim are also compared to that, and the eish as well. Right? We don't use an eish zara; you use the eish from the mizbeach. Ma mizbeach mishel tzibur af eitzim ve'eish mishel tzibur. Divi Rebbe Loza ber Shimon. Rebbe Loza ben Shamua imer. Ma mizbeach shel nishtamish by hedyet av eitzim ve'eish shel nishtamish by hedyet. He says that we learn from here that just like the mizbeach was never used by anyone else before it was made into mizbeach, so too the eitzim and the eish have to be brand new; they were never used before. It means, in addition, he's not really arguing with the first pshat. He agrees that it has to be mishal tzibur, but he's saying, even mishal tzibur, the tzibur can't use something that was previously used. They can't use eitzim and eish that were previously used. My beinayu, what's enough kamina between them? The difference is whether we require brand new wood for the mizbech. Batiki law, is it true that you can't use used wood? V'oksiv v'yoymer Arvana el David. Arvana told David, Yikach v'yal Adoni HaMelech HaToy B'einav, take what's good in your eyes. Rei habaka la'oila. Here's the oxen for an oila. V'hamirigan u'klei habakar la'etzim. And you could use the mirigan and the yokes of the oxen. You could use for firewood on the mizbech. So l'chayra, you see, he's talking about using used objects. So I don't know, hachanami b'chadti, it's also talking about brand new ones he was offering to be burnt on the mizbech. My mirigan, we had this before. Where was it? I think in Zvachim. Yeah, in Zvachim, the end of Zvachim. My mirigan amar ula mita shel tarbel, a tarbel bed. My mita shel tarbel. What does that mean? Amar Yehuda iza de kurkasa. It's a goat-shaped object, the dashu dashtoi, that is used to thresh the threshing. On the threshing floor, they had this iza de kurkasa that they used to finally thresh what was the wheat. Amar Yosef, Mikra. Where do we see that a mariga is a sharp object that's used for threshing? I'm making you into a moirig charetz chadash, full of sharp, a brand new one and sharp. Bal pifes with many points. Tadash harim, that's used for grinding the mountains. So you see, moirig is a thing used for disha, for threshing. Okay, we're at the Mishnah on Daf Chaf Beis Aminal. This Arav Kumtza b'kaimitz chaverta. If someone's kaimitz got mixed together with another kaimitz, the kaimitz is going to be burnt on the mizbeach, and then he mixed up with another kaimitz, it's also supposed to be burnt on the mizbeach. Or b'minchas kayanim, the mincha of a kayan, there's no kmitza on it. The whole thing is burnt. B'minchas kayan Mashiach, again, the minchas kayan Mashiach, b'paralam davar shel par kayan Mashiach, is also the mincha of it. I'm sorry, this is the minchas chavitim. I always mix that up. The minchas chavitim that was brought twice daily by the kayan gadol also was fully burned on the mizbeach. The minchas nesachim, the mincha that comes along with the carbon, that is fully burned without a kmitza. Kshera, all these things are kosher. You mixed in two things that both have to be burnt on the mizbeach. It is no harm, no foul. They're both getting burnt. Yehuda aimer b'minchas kayan Mashiach, b'minchas nesachim. If a regular kaimitz of a person who was menadev a mincha got mixed with the minchas chavitin or with the minchas nesachim, then it's partial shezub lila sa'ava. A regular mincha, you have one leg of shemen with one nisaron of silas. So it's a relatively floury, less liquidy. There's a small amount of oil compared to the amount of flour. But the ones that we mentioned, the minchas chavitin and the minchas nesachim, you have 3 leg of shemen with the same amount of flour, so it's much more liquidy, much more viscous. V'heim b'lo yizu mizu. And what's going to happen is you're going to mix in something that has more oil, a mincha with more oil with a mincha that has less oil, then you're going to have additional oil in the regular kaimets. And we like we said, if you're mechaser or miyaser with the oil, that's going to ruin the mincha. So both of them will really be ruined. One will have extra oil, and the other will have less oil than it's supposed to have. This is going to probably not bring back the fondest memories from a Gemara in Zvachim that was, I think, difficult at the time. But it's really not so hard. Tanasam. Dam shenis arv b'mayim. So if you remember, we had this back in Zvachim, and this was a little bit deceptive. It says dam that got mixed into water, but it really means is water that got mixed into dam. If you remember back in Zvachim, we said when you have dam mixing into water, we're talking about dam that's supposed to go on the mizbech. It's supposed to be nasan on the mizbech as a nesinas dam, and it's kaddish. If the dam falls into water, each drop is going to be bottled as it falls in. So we're not talking about that case. We're talking about the other way around. We had dam that had water mixed into it. So im yesh by maris dam kosher. If it still retains the appearance of water, it's going to be kosher. Nisar b'yayin, but if it got mixed into yayin, wine, we're not going to be able to see. It's not going to be so evident from the appearance, because it's still going to look like dam, even when you have a large amount of yayin. But as soon as there was an amount that if it would be water, it would no longer look like blood, it would look like pink water, then it would be that amount of yayin would also ruin the dam, that it could no longer be brought on the mizbeach. Nizarv b'dam behemai, b'dam chaya. It was nizarv, the dam of this kachim, of this carbon, got mixed with blood of a behema of chulin, or a chaya of chulin. You say the same thing. You look at it as if it's water. Yehuda disagrees. Ein dam mevatel dam. He says dam is not mevatel dam, like we're going to see soon. Yehuda holds bim b'minai is ein batel. Rav Yechon. Yechon says, Ushnei mikra echad darshu. Even the Rabbanan, the Chacham and Rabbi Yehuda are arguing about whether dam can theoretically be mevatel dam if it's a sufficient amount. Rabbi Yehuda says it's not mevatel, and the Chacham say it isn't. They're both coming from the same pasuk for why they hold that's the case. It says v'lakach midam hapar midam hasoyer. The Torah says legabi the avodah of Yom Kippur, you should take from the dam hapar and from the dam hasar. Right? There were two karbanos that were brought, and they brought, if you remember, we had 8 nesinas in the kodesh kadashim of the par and 8 of the soyer. That's how we had 16 there. Remember, if you had 43, so we had 8 of each, and then you took it outside and you did another 16, 8 of each. But then when you went to the mizbeach, at some point, it was a machlokes exactly at what point. At some point, you mixed together the 2 damim and you reserved them you did it on the 4 kronos of the mizbeach. Zok the Gemara. Hadavar yedua shadamish apah meru midamish al sayr. Obviously, a cow is much larger than a goat. So Rabbanan, but the Torah is saying never, even so that you should mix them together. Rabbanan Savri, Mikan la'oilin she'ein mevatlin zezeh. We see from here that if you have 2 things that are both supposed to go on the mizbeach, they're not going to be mevatel one another, right? So these are both the par and the sar are supposed to go on the mizbeach, so they're not going to be mevatel one another. But in our case, right, we're talking about you're mixing in dam shenisarv v'dam behema, b'dam chaya means the dam of chulin. You're not going to have the din of oilin is not mevatel zezeh, because one is oilin, one is not. To continue, he derives from the din of Yom Kippur that something that two things that are part of that are both the same min, they're not going to mevatel one another. So dam, whether it's oilin, whether it's something that's supposed to be on the mizbeach or not, that's still the same min. Zok Gemara. Rabbanan Sari Mikan, from this case of the Yom Kippur, we see that oilin she'em mevatlin zezeh. In fact, the Gemara v'dil mishum demim b'minahu. Why did they say? Why did they decide? Mehecha taste. I shouldn't say why. How do they know from this pasuk, from what the Torah says, that it's because of a oilin is aim of atlan zezeh, and maybe because mim b'mina is any bottle. So Gemara iyash me'in b'mina v'layash me'in an oilin kedika amrit. The Gemara says, had it just said, had the Torah given us a case of mim b'minoi, if it wanted to tell you that mim b'minoi is any bottle, it should have told you just mim b'minoi. For the fact that it also said a case that is oilin, so hashmin and oilin mishum the oilin. So now the Torah said oilin, it has to be because of oilin. In fact, the Gemara, the Dilma ad ikam mim b'minoi ve'oilin. So if you're saying that there was no, the Torah should have just said, if it wanted to tell you min b'minai, it should have given a case that min b'minai is any battle. Should have given just a case of min b'minai. Now gave a case where it's both min b'minai and both oilin. So l'chayra means that you need both. In order for it not to be battle, it should be both oilin and min b'minai. So the Gemara kasha, it's not a good kasha. The Gemara has the same shrak of Atar and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda savim mikan l'min b'minai she'eni battle. Yehuda says, you see from here, that min b'minai is not bottle. You have two things that are the same, that mix together. It won't, even if there's a larger amount of one of them, even if it's enough, like we said, for example, that if it was turned into water, the dam would lose its tzura, it's still not going to be bottle. The dil mishum da oilinhu. How does he know that it's min b'minai? Maybe it's because it's oilin, like the Chum say. Yishmiyah min b'minai k't'gamret. If it would have given a case where it's oilin together with min b'she'enei minoi, then I would talk a learn at oilin. Hasrash mina min b'minoi mishum de minoi who? So you have a dilma adeka min b'minoi ve'oilin. Again, the same question. Kasha. So there's no determination, there's no rayas from this, but we're just saying that you can't bring a raya to either one. Yeah. And we have a kasha. Why taka? If you're the reason why you're rejecting the other pshat is because the Torah should have said specifically that, but it didn't say specifically the one that either of Yehuda and Chamim are learning out from it. It's not. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, the Minchas Kayin Mashiach of Minchas Nesachem Psula, Shezub Blilasa Avav Zub Blilasa Raka. We said in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda says that when you have a mixture of kaimitz, of kaimtzin, of a regular kaimitz, which has less oil in it, and together with the minchas chavitin, or the minchas nesachem, that has a large amount of oil in it, he says they're going to be puzzle because one is a thicker mixture and one is a thinner mixture, and they're going to absorb one from the other, and you're going to have extra oil in the minchas, the regular mincha, and you have less than the proper amount of oil in the minchas nesachem and the minchas chavitin. In fact, the Gemara, my havi, what's the problem? Min b'minai who Rabbi Yehuda is the man the Amar who says min b'minai is not bottle. So why? There shouldn't be a two dots here. This is really the reason why we brought the earlier Gemara. So Zak Gemara. So why in our Mishnah does he say it's going to be by Leah? Let's say that the oil does not mix with the other oil, and therefore it's not going to be bottled. So you still have the proper amount of oil in each one. Amarava kasav Yehuda koshu min b'minai v'davar achar salakas mina ki mishe'ena v'she'ena mina riba lava mavatlei. Yehuda holds whenever you have a min b'minai together with something else, you take away the thing that is of the same min. Over here you have oil mixed with oil, but you also have flour. It's part of a larger mixture. So although you have a min b'mina on the oil, you have the oil is mixed with the flour, So we disregard the oil. We don't say min b'mina zeni batel, but rather we say that it's batel in the flour. There's certainly a lot more flour than there is of this oil. So Salagas min kamishenai v'sheini mini riba lovim avatloi. We'll say that the sheini minoi will win over and it will be mavatal the smaller amount of oil that's mixed into the flour. Okay, we'll stop over here.
All right, wonderful. All right,
Lean that
thanks.
there,
Yeah.
Dovi. I hope to be in shul tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know if I can make the shul because my wife's away, so I'm doing the buses in the morning.
Oh, I should really ask you a question. Is it possible to park it?
It's doable.
It's doable.
I mean, it's a little rough, but it's doable.
Okay, I'll see. Because my car is very low. It doesn't have a lot of clearance on bottom.